welcome to the Communication Studies podcast. My name is Justin Young. I am a faculty member here in the School of Communication Studies at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And this week I am joined by Kalie Scanlan. Hi, Kalie.
Hey.
So Kalie is a PhD student here in the School of Communication Studies. She is currently, is ABD the correct designation for you? All but dissertation?
Yeah, I think that's the unofficial. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say as far as on a resume or anything.
Right. So you are currently finishing up, though, your doctoral work and working on your dissertation?
Oh, thank goodness, yes.
And just real quick, you're planning to be done in the spring, is that correct?
That's my hope. If everything goes well, I'm planning to graduate in May.
All right. So we're going to talk to Kalie a bit about what she's doing currently with that dissertation, some of her other work. But one of the first things I'd like to know is, your interest is in theater and performance. What got you interested in that? How did you get to here at SIU today and everything? What sparked your interest in theater?
Boy, that's a long story. Can it be a long story?
Sure. Maybe you can give us the abbreviated version.
I will try. No, I've always been interested in theater. When I was really, really young, my brother Brent was in a high school play. He's much older than me, about 12 years. And apparently, now I don't remember this, but my mom took me to the play, and she said that I looked at her afterward and said, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. So in high school, I tried my hand at acting. It was awful. I hated it. It was horrible. My anxiety was, it was not great. I didn't like it. And so I ended up auditioning for a play and didn't get a part, and I was sort of relieved. Mm-hmm. She casted me as, what is it called? Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah. And I was casted as one of the puppeteers for the plant.
For Audrey.
Yeah, Audrey too. And I really enjoyed that, just not being seen. I was obviously on stage for a lot of it, but some of the time when I wasn't on stage as one of the plants, I would be backstage just making sure that props were ready and set pieces and things like that. So that's really where I found my love of being a part of theater, but not being on the stage. And so really in college is when I got into stage management, and that's really where my focus was for a very long time.
Okay. I'm going to ask you just real quick to move your microphone just a little bit closer to you.
Right here?
Yeah, that's
All right.
great. Yeah, so I noticed that you did your master's work at the University of Akron.
Yep, in Akron, Ohio.
And that was in arts administration.
Yes.
So I always think that's really interesting because everybody wants to be the artist, right? Everybody wants to be sort of on stage, or they want their painting to be hanging in the museum and everything. But there's a whole lot of jobs on the administrative side that people often overlook. So how was that doing your master's work in that, and what did you learn about maybe the theatrical world from the administrative point of view?
Well, a lot of people don't think about administration. Like you said, it's kind of, you go to a play and you're looking at the lights and the sound and the actors and the dancers and the costumes and everything, because that's what you see right out the bat. But it's really cool to consider that there are so many people that have to do work way beforehand or even all year for a production that happens one time. And so you need people to raise the money for it. So the development team, you need people to spread awareness for it, the marketing team. You need somebody to oversee the offices, so the managing director. Mm-hmm. There are so many people in the offices that work all day, every day, 9 to 5, just to make sure that these productions do go off without a hitch. And so I really, as somebody who, I did stage management, which is really active support for the production, but I wanted to look into a little bit less in the production, in the active support, but still be contributing to everything that they need in order to make the productions happen, because I think that they're really important. And so I did a lot of focusing through my master's degree. I focused on mostly development and grant writing, so a lot of fundraising stuff. And I thought it was really important work, because without that, there would be no production. They wouldn't have money for the costumes or the set pieces, or paying the performers, you know.
So, I mean, you talk about that people often overlook the development side, and they often overlook the fact that there's somebody in the theater working all year round, right? Getting, you know, even if it's just the physical space, right? Like maintaining the physical space and everything. What do you think is the area that people probably most overlook when it comes to arts administration? Like, what is the thing that the general public is maybe most oblivious to?
That's a hard one. I think, honestly, the most overlooked is probably development. In fact, some theaters don't even have a development department. They rely on their entire administration staff to take care of all these different things that go into development, which unfortunately I've noticed, as far as, you know, the research that I did for my master's degree, oftentimes those nonprofits fail very quickly. Because people don't realize just how many hours has to go into fundraising and development. You have to build rapport with your patrons. You have to plan events. You have to do a lot of data entry. And so these are little things that really add up. And so when those responsibilities are spread throughout the entire administrative staff, oftentimes things fall to the wayside. Rapport is not built up with patrons. Asks can't be as big because you have not developed that relationship with your patrons. And so, in my opinion, I think development and maybe not grant writing, but development as a whole, aside from grant writing, I think is very overlooked in a lot of theaters.
And also just generally with nonprofits, there's a misunderstanding that, you know, often nonprofits are having to spend money to raise money. And so they often get some blowback over that. Like, oh, well, why are you spending, you know, $1,000 or thousands of dollars on this fundraising event? And it's like, oh, because we will get X times amount back in return for it.
Exactly. It's a lot of upfront money, especially if you are doing galas or events or anything like that. But part of the chief development officer's job is to really prove to the board that this money is really needed, because it will get this much back, especially if you have patrons that are wealthy in the community. That's a really important thing. And so again, if these jobs are split up between the other administrators, sometimes you just can't. They don't have the insight. They don't know these people. They don't know. A lot of it is honestly math and money, you know?
Right.
Right. And you have to be able to prove to the board that this money that we're upfronting is really worth it.
So this might be a little bit of inside baseball, but who are those patrons that are the biggest supporters? So you noted like rich donors and that sort of thing, but is it a situation where theaters are actually getting an equal amount from small money donors? I mean, we've certainly seen that in politics lately, right? Where it's the people who are giving $10, $20 who add up to as much as the person who's giving $10,000 or something of that nature. Are we seeing similar things in the theatrical world, or is it still those like 10 big ticket donors that are really bringing in most of the money?
That really depends on the community and the theater that the community that theater's in. But you're right. Oftentimes it is the small donors, the $10, $20, $30 donors. And that does add up. However, again, a development team, their position is to have incentives for the small donors, or to really reach out to people after every single show, or, team up with the marketing team. So while they're doing marketing materials, also have an ask on there. And so that's really important, yes, to get the small donors. But also, theater is still, the patrons are still much older.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that does mean that a lot of theater's audience base is literally dying out. And so, of course, marketing and promotion really needs to focus on getting these young people. But at the moment, development really they really need to focus on the older patrons, because oftentimes they have more expendable money right now. Whether or not that's a good thing or not. But
they also have money they could leave in a will, for example.
Yes, exactly.
And I know that's a big part of development.
Yes. Making sure that you have such a close relationship with somebody that when they pass away, that there is a chunk of that they can give, whether it's monetary or in kind. A lot of times they will leave furniture to theaters to use as props, which is really, really nice, really good. Because props do cost a lot of money to buy or build.
Sure.
And so even if it's not monetary, just having, in-kind donations, objects, things, bikes, beds,
Yeah, as somebody who's been shopping for furniture, couches are really expensive.
Yes, they are. So usually it's the props department will make a platform and put a sheet on it and say it's a bed because it's a lot cheaper.
Sure, yeah. And, the audience can go along with it.
Right.
So you mentioned a bit earlier about your experience with stage management, and here at SIU, you've taught actually a course in stage management as well as the practicum. So I guess we should explain real quick kind of up front. A practicum, for somebody who maybe isn't familiar with that term, is sort of like an internship, maybe a term people are more familiar with, but it's a sort of hands-on experience actually doing the work that you learned in a class.
Yeah, the main stage management course is, of course, in the classroom. We learn out of books. We talk about things. We discuss interpersonal issues and responsibilities and things that the stage managers might encounter. But yes, the practicum is they get to stage manage or assistant stage manage a real show. Usually here at SIU, it's the SIU shows. But there are opportunities to get some of those credits outside of SIU. But for the most part, just because we don't have, we have so many positions and we have so many opportunities. And so oftentimes we get our stage managers to do our shows, which is really nice because that allows them to continue to work over and over with the same actors and the same designers and things. And so they can really work through interpersonal struggles or challenges and, build rapport. And these are really great practice tools for students who want to stage manage out in, as their career. So they get to do the normal paperwork. They get to learn all of the software stuff that they need. They learn how to handle the stage and how to call cues. And so this is all stuff that when actors, oftentimes in regional theaters, for example, oftentimes actors will be asked to stage manage and they are thrown into it, and it's a very hard job. And so it's really nice that these students are not just thrown in. They are given all the tools that they need before they do it. And then while they do it, the stage management practicum instructor, which I did for a little while, supervises them, gives them advice, gives them, they'll have questions or they'll be stuck, and I'm right there beside them.
So I guess we maybe need to, I have some background. I've done some theater, all amateur, and so I kind of have an idea what a stage manager does, but I'm not sure that the average person who may be listening does. So what does a stage manager do on a play?
Everything. All the things. Well, the stage manager is pretty much the head liaison between all of these different departments or creative departments specifically. And so from beginning to end, they are the ones that are maintaining the integrity of the show. So they are making sure that actors know when they are called. They are putting out all of the paperwork. They are communicating with designers, getting cues from designers, putting that in their call books. They're working with the director. The director oftentimes has, they'll block the actors and they'll have notes for the actors. So the stage manager keeps track of all of that. I don't think there's enough time in a year to explain everything that a stage manager does. So they are in charge of keeping everyone on track through the process from beginning to end. And then at the very end, they're the one who calls the show. So they are the one who says, lights go, sound go.
Mm-hmm.
And they should know by the end of it, and they probably will because they have gone through the script over and over and over and over again. They should know on page 42, this actor is facing this way. It is on this side of the stage. They're wearing this costume. This light is on them, this color light, and this sound effect is playing. Mm-hmm. They should know that right off the bat. And they will because they're the first one in and the last one out, not only for the process, but also each day. They come and lock the place, and then they stay after cleanup and all that kind of stuff. So it's a hard job, but it's extremely rewarding, and it feels so nice to finally get to the final performance, and you just know, you hear the audience and they're just loving what they're seeing, and they don't even know that you exist, which is actually perfect, because if they know you exist, that means you messed something up.
If the lights are falling on
Right.
actors, that's a bad sign.
Right. So if the audience is just enjoying themselves, they're laughing, they're crying, or they are exasperated or whatever the emotion is, if they have a strong emotion, but you know that they don't know that you even are there, mm-hmm. That's when you know that you have fulfilled your job and you did an awesome job on it. And it's just really rewarding.
So you kind of touched on this, that if you're at a small regional playhouse or something, that the actors might be wearing multiple hats. So mm-hmm. They might be asked to not only be an actor on stage, but pick up some of the duties, if not the full duties, of the stage manager and everything.
Oftentimes not at the same time. They'll be an actor, but for one show, it would be impossible to do both at the same time. Mm-hmm. Maybe assistant stage manager backstage could happen, but that would be really hard.
Right. So what do you think the value of having students do this course and do the practicum and everything? You've touched on that already and everything, but what do you think insight or perspective it gives a student who says, hey, I'm going to be the next superstar actor. I'm going to be the next Bob Odenkirk, right? A very proud SIU alum. What does being the stage manager through your course and through the practicum, what sort of insight does that give them into the, the experience, the total experience of a production?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stage management course is open to pretty much anybody over in theater. And in fact, I don't even know that you necessarily even have to be in theater to be a part of it. So I have not had the pleasure of teaching an actor specifically, but mm-hmm. I have for people that are designers, but they also have an interest in acting. And I think that a lot of the skills are really applicable to any field within theater or out, the organization, interpersonal communication, management, supervisory jobs, mm-hmm. It is applicable to other things, but also it gives people who are not necessarily wanting to be stage managers for the rest of their life, if that's not the career that they want, it gives them a whole new respect for what the stage manager does. And that is really important because it does help with the relationship between the stage manager and the performer, or a stage manager and the designer later on in life. If they understand what the stage manager does, They understand that there are reasons for some of the things that they're being told. You know, if they have that background and they have that understanding, it does help with the communication and rapport between them, which is really, really important.
And right now, one of the issues that that Hollywood is facing is a lot of the technical people are currently considering going on strike, and some of their biggest supporters have been these sort of A-list actors that we're all familiar with, who are out there saying, no, you don't understand. They're doing the hard work behind the scenes. It seems like that experience doing stage management and everything helps build that sort of respect and that sort of appreciation.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And unfortunately, a lot of people, even within unions in theater, are not given the respect and safety that they need in the workplace. So IATSE, that's the union I believe that's the union that's going on strike right now. And they're working 10 out of 12, which means within a 12-hour period, they can work 10 hours, and that can be day in, day out, which is just too much. And oftentimes, even if they are granted a break, they are strongly discouraged to take a break. And that's not just IATSE, that's not just in Hollywood, that's in a lot of theaters. Unfortunately, it's an epidemic of overworking technical personnel.
Why do you think that is? Is it that the profit margins are that small? I mean, obviously we don't think that's true in Hollywood, but it's certainly probably true at a lot of theaters. Is that the reason? Is it that sometimes the sort of mentality of, well, these people are in it for the art and the passion of it, so we can expect them to work themselves harder than we would at McDonald's or someplace because they're passionate about this, right? This is their life dream and everything, to be working in this. Why do you think it is that those workers are overworked?
I think in a lot of cases it is the turnaround time between shows is so short, and they're told the show must go on. It must happen, and it must be up to these standards. And that's not necessarily unreasonable, but at the same time, they're the designers and the carpenters and all of the staff within the departments, they have to get the work done in this amount of time. And so oftentimes that means that they have to work over hours every day, especially when it gets down to Tech Week. Tech Week is awful for everybody, honestly, but particularly the designers and the stage manager, just super long hours because we have 2 months to put together this huge production. So you do what you got to do. And a lot of times these organizations will not hire additional staff or not hire assistants or not fill all positions. And so we have too many people doing too many things in too short of a time.
All right. Well, speaking of doing a lot of different things, you have worked, credits listed, working in wardrobe, working as the electrician on a show. What does it mean to work as the electrician on a stage show?
The electricians usually are stationed on lights. So they're the people who hang or focus lights, focusing as far as the designer will say, the light has to be sharp and it's in this location of the stage. And you point the light that way and you adjust the, whatever lamp you have or whatever to make it to the designer's preference. So that's what the electricians usually do. They hook up the lights. Sometimes they work on sound. Those are typically audio engineers, but sometimes the electricians will do that as well or help. They may also work with practicals on stage. Practicals meaning lamps or a working toaster or something like that. The electricians would do that.
When you talk about lights, I have to ask, so when I was doing plays, it was very old like lighting boards and everything. So, it was like the literal ones where you have to unplug them, but it's not a traditional like electrical socket, but you were like literally unplugging things and plugging them back in. Mm-hmm. Are most places a little bit more updated than that? Because that always seemed like a death trap waiting to happen.
Not necessarily. I mean, I hate to say it, but death trap waiting to happen is a lot of theaters. No, okay, it depends, and this is why development is so important. We need to get more money into the production, so development, like I said before, is really, really important. But no, unfortunately, a lot of theaters just don't make the kind of money to get updated equipment, but some of them do, and thankfully now, at least the ones that I worked for, thankfully have slightly better.
That's good
boards.
To hear.
Yeah, not by a lot.
That's good to hear because that was always a little kind of intimidating. I've got to ask you, because you had this listed on your CV that you had at one point worked at Spencer's Gifts. And I'm
probably going to take that off of there. I don't know what to do with it, honestly.
Well, I'm just thinking of every retail outlet. Spencer's Gift has got to be the best place for like a theater kid, right?
Oh, it was so fun.
So what made that like a great place to work for somebody who is into theater, into, sort of the boldness of everything? What makes Spencer's Gifts the best job to get?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine being in Macy's or something and just having to put on this big fake smile and like, hello, may I get you this? Oh, that dress looks so good on you. Like I cannot. So what was really nice about Spencer's is that we could play around and joke with our guests, and the whole place was just a party all day, every day. It was just jokes and fun. No, it probably shouldn't be on my CV.
Well,
but yeah, I thought it taught me a lot too, as far as it really helped me with interacting with other people, because of course in sales you're sort of forced to go up and bug everybody and try to promote more things. But it helped me a lot as far as interpersonal communication, really trying to get on people's side and that kind of thing. But also, that was my very first supervisory job too, which was, I think that's a really important thing as a young person, to have that experience, whether or not you want to continue in management or supervisoryship, but just having that experience, having more respect for the people who do supervise you. So that's what that taught me. And yeah, it was a good place to work out of all the retail places I can think of.
I've got to ask the logical follow-up question here, which is, how many blacklight posters do you own now?
None. I didn't buy anything from there.
Okay.
Wait, no, scratch that. I bought like jewelry from there, things like that.
Okay.
But most stuff was too expensive, even with the discount, and also just not my style.
My intense memory as a child are the blacklight posters in Spencer's Gifts. That was like the coolest thing as a little kid, was the blacklight posters, which were always full of like unicorns and weird like fantasy imagery. I feel like. So one other job to kind of touch on here real quick, that you do wildlife conservationist and field worker.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that seems like a departure from all the theater stuff, but I don't know. Is it being a guide to people, like, and kind of telling them about an area or telling them stories about the area, or what kind of work are you doing with that?
Oh, yeah, it's not related at all to my work and my research. I just I just love animals.
Yeah.
When I was originally going into undergrad, I was really debating with myself whether I wanted to go into theater and art, or if I wanted to go into veterinary science. It was a debate for myself. So this way, volunteering for a wildlife rehab, which recently I haven't had a whole lot of time for it just because of the dissertation and everything, but I do want to up that time. And anybody else is called free again. Please go volunteer there. They need people. But no, that was just something that, okay, well, I'm doing my work, I'm doing my research and everything, but also I'm missing out on helping animals. So I decided to go volunteer there. A lot of the work that I do there is a lot of poop cleaning.
Okay.
Cage cleaning and wrapping wounds, feeding, some releases, things like that. So we would find places that oftentimes, because you can't just take a wild animal and put them anywhere, that's against the law. So you have to find a property, find the owner of the property, make sure the owner is okay with you releasing it. And then you, once it's well and healed and everything, you and ready, you take it into the wild. Now, some animals can never go back into the wild, so they need lifelong care. And so I really enjoy helping them, knowing that I'm making a difference. And, you know, I've really only had one, not even bad experience, just annoying. I got bit by a baby raccoon.
Oh.
It was so cute, but it got right into my thumb. And I went to the doctor. Obviously, this raccoon did not have rabies. It's contrary to popular belief, wildlife, it's very rare that rabies happens. Usually it's distemper, which humans don't really get from them. But I had gone to the doctor because I thought maybe it could get infected because this was a wild animal, obviously. Sure. And they were wanting to go find the animal and put it down. And so I had to lie and say that, because I knew exactly where that animal was, but I wasn't about to let them put him down for biting me. He was a baby and he was scared, you know, I was just trying to feed him. And so I told them that I was driving on the side of the road and I just felt like petting a baby raccoon and I did it and it bit me. And so the doctors thought I was real dumb. But
that would feel like a really dumb thing to do if somebody told you.
Right. So I was like, I don't know where it went. It ran off. You can't kill it. So give me some rabies shots, I guess. So I got rabies shots.
So obviously baby raccoons. What sort of other animals have you dealt with?
Deer, turkeys, foxes, a lot of cats. Possums, skunks, birds, owls. And 2 otters.
Oh, wow. 2 otters.
Yeah. They're mean.
Really?
Yeah.
They're so cute.
They're so mean. Oh, they're cute, but they are mean.
Huh. I would have never thought. Now, raccoons, I know, are like really...
Yeah, they get a little vicious.
Yeah.
Especially when you have food in your hand.
Yeah, they can. But they're also like not at all intimidated. Like, you know, like other animals like deer, you know, scatter at the, you know,
yeah,
at
they
any
don't
sound.
care. If they think that you have food, they do not care.
So I got to ask you the follow-up question here. You mentioned a lot of cleaning up poop.
Yeah.
Which animal is the worst for cleaning up after?
Oh, they're all awful. The worst is, it's got to be raccoons because they walk around in it and they get it all over the walls and even the ceiling of their cage. And I don't even know how they climb up that high, but they figured it out. And so it's not only cleaning every inch of their cage, but like scrubbing because they pack it in there with their little feet. And then cleaning them, which is really hard to do. If you've ever tried to bathe a raccoon.
This is how you get bit, right?
Right. But it's so fun. It's so fun and rewarding.
That sounds amazing and everything. What group specifically is that you work with?
This is the Free Again Wildlife Rehabilitation Center.
Okay.
So if you look it up on Google, what comes up is... Gosh, I can't remember, but it's her husband's like paint thinner job thing. He sells stuff like that. So that'll come up on Google, but it is the address. So yeah, just do the address, go up there. And they have a phone number too, so you can sign up with her. And her name is Beverly, and she's really nice. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we have a few other things to get to, but I want to make sure that we get to your dissertation.
Of course.
And your dissertation, let me try to read this because it's a mouthful.
It sure is. And this is just a working title. This will probably change a lot of times.
The effects of narrative conversational storytelling on effective empathy and relational bonding, a quantitative causal comparative study. Causal, sorry, not casual. I'm having trouble reading here, but I actually got it all out without too much of a tripping over.
You did.
But okay, I read that.
What does it mean?
What does it mean?
I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
I hope by now, since you're planning to defend in the spring, you do have an idea.
I have a little bit of an idea. Okay, so yeah, I'm specifically focusing on narrative conversational storytelling. So people discussing with one another their real life past memories, their feelings, and listening and sharing with one another. So it's a back and forth conversation as well. And I am also testing with this activity, the storytelling activity, what effect it has on affective empathy specifically instead of cognitive empathy and relational bonding or perceived relational bonding.
So explain to us the difference between affective empathy versus cognitive empathy.
Yeah. Well, all of this goes under the umbrella of theory of mind, which is essentially understanding that other people have different thoughts than you do and have different information than you do. Mm-hmm. Within that is empathy, and empathy is split up into, I mean, it really depends on who you cite as far as how many types of empathy there are, but the kind of overall consensus is that there is cognitive and affective. Cognitive is I see someone crying and I understand that means that they are likely sad.
Mm-hmm.
So affective, on the other hand, is more of a internal effect, an internal change. I see someone crying and therefore I feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a personal, you take on the emotions of other people. Affective is also split up as well into reactive and parallel. Reactive is, if you're walking down the street and somebody in front of you gets a slur thrown at them or whatever, you feel angry that happened to them. That is reactive. If they say the slur to the person and they're upset and you feel upset, so you feel a similar emotion to that person, that's parallel.
Okay.
So specifically, I was trying to focus on affective empathy, so internal empathy rather than understanding, which is still really important. I am finding, though, with this study that it doesn't really matter as far as between the two. If you are taking the time to perspective take and understand where somebody is coming from, it doesn't matter if you feel it or not. It just matters that you get it and you act based on your understanding. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I was focusing on affective empathy, but I am going to talk about in there that it doesn't make much of a difference in action.
And the focus is on storytelling and the way that people dialogue a story with one another.
Yes.
So kind of like maybe explain that a little bit more, because I feel like I kind of have an idea what you mean, but.
So for example, one of, my study has 3 different scenarios, and each scenario is a little bit different, but mm-hmm. One scenario, for example, is prompted face-to-face. So I'll ask a question like, tell me about a time when you felt that your time had been wasted.
Okay.
And the storyteller will tell from beginning to end who was there, what happened. They tell a story about, I don't know, their cat was really overweight and their vet said to walk it every day, and they walked it every day and it did not lose weight, so it felt like their time had been wasted.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a back and forth where the listener is invited to laugh, nod, interject, anything that comes naturally to them, because it's just a conversation between the two.
Right.
They're asked after this. This is where it kind of gets a little bit away from just normal conversational storytelling, where the listener is asked and prompted to consider how it felt for the storyteller during the experience, what kind of emotions they may have been feeling. Basically just an active, verbal, empathetic response or perspective-taking response. And then the storyteller can say, yeah, that's right, or no, I actually felt this way. And then they take turns and they do that back and forth. And so they are invited to share real life stories and memories from their life. In one of them, it's unprompted. One of them, it's prompted. And, so it's a conversation between the two.
And this is a sort of laboratory setup by you, where you're bringing two people in and asking them to perform this. Yes,
just for the study, because this is a quantitative study, it needs to have variables that can be replicated. And so I tried to eliminate all external variables that I could. Of course, that's not necessarily possible, especially if I don't have my own lab.
Right.
And everybody's different too. And so they interpret things differently. And that makes it really interesting as well.
Certainly, like somebody, if you ask me a time my time has been wasted, my definition of something that's a waste of my time might be very different than, say, yours or someone else's.
Yeah. And so there were obviously a lot of variables, and I can't, because the stories themselves were so open and they could talk about almost whatever they wanted. They could even say, I don't like that prompt, I want to tell this story, instead, which didn't really happen that much, but they were allowed to. But the real, I wanted to eliminate all of the external variables as far as sound and other people and discomfort as much as possible. So I tried to keep the space enclosed and just us, where they could be free to talk about whatever they wanted and not feel like somebody's listening in. They were given pseudonyms instead of their names, so they didn't have to feel like anyone outside of the study was going to judge them based on something that they said. And so, throughout the three scenarios, I tried to change variables specifically in order to be replicated later. That's one thing in a quantitative study that you really need to be able to do, is that another researcher should be able to come by and, at least for the most part, replicate your study.
Right. So, the setup for this, of somebody telling somebody a story of, a time they feel like their time's been wasted, for example. If I were to sit here and tell you a time I felt like my time has been wasted, and then that you would give me feedback along the way, like, as you noted, nodding or laughing or whatever, right? Like, we talk about that as part of the communication model, that, you give, the listener gives the speaker feedback and everything. But the third part of it, the sort of post part, where you're sort of asking them about their empathy and how they connect it with this. That's not something that we necessarily normally do as part of our lives. The first two parts, telling the story and then delivering the feedback, are very much part. So what is the, I guess maybe what is the real world application of finding that out and everything? Is it completely artificial, or is there some way that we are doing that in our lives and we're just not necessarily thinking of it in those terms?
This is kind of artificial, and I think that it would continue to be that way even if it was used in practice. So this would be an activity that one would do with an audience of a performance. So there would be this very structured back and forth. And so, yes, we do already perspective take, but we are not active about it in our everyday lives. We don't verbalize it. We don't write it down.
Sure.
And something that I'm working with is Theater for Social Change, and their attempts to make action happen in accordance to social change. And a lot of that is their idea of how theater for social change impacts empathy and perspective taking. And so I'm trying to develop something that may fast track it, may make it stronger, may make connections happen a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And from the research that I've done, especially in social psychology, which is kind of a side thing that's coming into this dissertation is social psych, having this active verbal, I understand you, this is how I know that you feel, even just self-disclosing helps you trust another person more. And then having that corrected or confirmed, because empathy is, contrary to what a lot of people think, is learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So having the storyteller say, absolutely, that's exactly how I felt, or, I mean, you're close, but this is actually how I felt. Having that confirmed or corrected for the listener also helps them to further develop their empathy for the other person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because it's sort of a previous guest of ours, Shelby Swafford, who is also doing performance and everything, and also, working on her research right now. One of the things that we talked about was, this ideal that the author is dead, right? The Roland Barthes sort of ideal that when you publish something, it's just out there, and you as the author don't get this opportunity to go sit down with the audience and say, okay, well, let's talk about it. I think about Steven Spielberg refuses to do commentary tracks on his films because he says my film should stand on its own, and you don't need my explanation of it. And it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're kind of pushing for something slightly different than that.
Yes.
An idea of a living author in the moment who, at the end of this case, telling a story, or maybe at the end of a theatrical production, who could sit there and let the audience give them feedback, and they could then in turn give feedback to that audience and say, hey, you guys were laughing at the wrong part. That's not supposed to be funny.
Yeah, this would be an activity that would be done after, typically like a narrative performance or something along those lines. And it's like a very structured in the moment talk back, essentially. There would have to be a moderator, somebody that would prompt along the way to make sure that it stays structured. And so this is more of a specific activity than something that we can just do in everyday life, which of course we kind of do. I mean, if somebody tells you about their day and it just sucked, you just go, I'm so sorry. Your day really sucked. You must feel really bad. And you empathize with them, not really in the same structure, but you're still doing it. But this is just activating it more, making it stronger, making it very open to pretty much the kind of getting into the theory of mind thing, where you are very actively aware of what you are understanding and what you're taking in and what you're expressing.
So, one of the values, I think, of art in our world is that art teaches empathy, right? When you said earlier, some people say you can't learn empathy. Well, that's kind of the whole ideal behind art, right?
Right.
That it exposes us to different ideas, different people, different experiences than our own, and that from that, we have a better understanding of the world around us, and particularly the world that's different than us, that, is not our experience. It seems like to me this is trying to, really trying to embrace that idea, and really trying to make sure. I don't want to say make sure, because I don't want to make it sound like it's forcing anyone, but maybe helping the audience kind of get there if they're struggling.
Right. Yeah. It is guided. It's prompted. It is, having them take an action, essentially, you have to use different parts of your brain. You have to, what is it? The prefrontal cortex, as far as from my research, when you verbalize your feelings, it lights up a lot more than when you just think them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, these are things that I'm trying to incorporate to make it, I don't know if stronger is the right word, but more active, more engaged, something that they are actively thinking about, considering, and verbalizing.
Maybe resonate in some way. No, that seems really interesting. Were you inspired to this, or maybe, you know, kind of motivated towards this by looking at things where people were maybe getting conflicting emotions or conflicting reactions to it? Because I certainly know there have been things I've watched before and then would later go listen to somebody else talk about, and I was like, I don't think you maybe got the point to that. And, you know, sometimes that's just about different experiences, right? Somebody comes in with a different experience. Sometimes it's maybe that you keep using the term active, you know, an active listening or active participant in it. Sometimes it's because we expect art to be passive, something that we kind of sit back and consume, whether it's a movie or music or even a book to some degree, right? This is sort of forcing people to be a more active participant in it, and is the hope that in turn leads them to a better understanding of the art?
Right. Well, I took some inspiration, I guess, from, do you know Theater of the Oppressed, Augusta Boal? He does theater for social change, and he has a lot of different theatrical forms, you know, living newspaper, things like that. And with Theater of the Oppressed, he would come in, I feel, maybe with an agenda of this is what we are going to address today. And he had this term spect actors, where he would have people watch and then come up and perform. And yes, that is active perspective taking. However, they didn't have a lot of discussion afterward. They didn't get to choose what issues were really important to them. And also it leaves out the people that are not, whether it's confidence or whether it's introvertedness or whatever the reason is, that they aren't getting up to act out a piece, because not everybody wants to perform.
Right.
And so it's leaving out a big group of people that can't really participate in this or don't want to. And so this way, it is a little bit more passive than that, but it's not totally passive. It is engaging verbally and mentally rather than getting them up, acting out a part. And that also, you know, I don't want to create something that has to be segmented out as its own workshop. I want to create something that can just be incorporated after anything you go to.
Right.
You know, you just go see, I don't know, if you go see Tim Miller or something, you aren't going to want to go up and do a whole workshop afterward, just to have a conversation afterward. That makes it a lot more accessible to a lot more people, in my opinion.
Yeah, and certainly that's great. I mean, as you were talking about, the audience for theater is older and kind of dying out, and if you can make it more accessible to a new audience,
right,
that makes it even better, right? All right. One other thing I wanted to ask you about here. So you did some puppet work for East of the Sun, West of the Moon, a show here as part of the Kleinau Theater. You did character design and puppet maker. Can you kind of talk about that? Because, you know, are you creating the next Fozzie Bear for us?
No, and the puppets are a little bit, hang on, I'll explain. I'm going to take a swig of my drink. Okay.
I mean, if you are creating the next Fozzie Bear, I'm super impressed, let me tell you.
No, these puppets were, okay. So the creator of East of the Sun, West of the Moon was Angela Duggins. She was the writer, director of this play, and it was virtual. It was over Zoom. And for the puppets, originally they were just going to be drawings, and she had me do character design. So she just gave me the personalities of all of these characters and said, kind of going for this style, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I drew up and created all of these characters. There was a bear man, there was a witch that changed into an ugly witch, and a little girl who turned into a duck, a man who turned into a horse, you know, things like that.
So you're creating BoJack Horseman, basically.
Pretty much. No, I made the horse pretty realistic, but I mean, if you wanted him to talk, you could.
Yeah.
But also a bunch of trolls, things like that. So originally they were just going to be drawings, but then we were thinking, instead of that, in order to make a lot of movement and dynamicism happen with this camera kind of over the top and then a green screen background with, you know, other people's drawings of backgrounds and barns and houses and landscape and things, have that as the background and then be able to move the characters. So we did like not really paper. I mean, a lot of them, pieces of them were made of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of like flat paper puppets with realistic movement in their arms and legs and feet and head and all that. But they were mostly made out of crafting materials. I sewed on their clothes. I created their hair out of twine and things like that. So a lot of glue.
Yeah.
And all of their joints were made of buttons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's pretty much what I did for the character designer thing and the puppet maker. So I made these puppets. I didn't really move them. They weren't the kinds of puppets that you stick your hand up into or anything like that.
Right.
But they were just flat and had to have sort of realistic movements. I think the hardest one was the horse because they have so many joints.
Right.
And his hair was really hard, but we got him this. I did like I got yarn and I brushed it out and took a straightener to it and made it sort of Fosse hair,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or not Fosse, Fabio hair.
So if Muppet Studios calls, are you going to take that call? Is that
Well, if they give me enough money, I sure will try.
Well, you know,
I feel like for the most part, as far as like working with my hands and making things, that's something that even if I've never done it before, I could do it, you know.
Sure.
I'm good at crafting. I love it. I love sewing. And so it was just a really cool opportunity to make these little puppets. They were just so fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the play was really different. It was interesting having it over Zoom, having all these different artists come together with so many different styles. It was really neat.
Yeah, our episode with Craig Gingrich Philbrook, he talks a lot about the change that forced and how it's made a lot of people rethink, you know, the way that productions are put out into the world and everything. Because for a good year, if you were going to do anything, it had to be videotaped or on Zoom or, you know, in some way captured onto media and for distribution. So it made a lot of people kind of start to rethink what was possible.
Yeah, and it came out so inventive, and so many different people got to show off their own skills and things like that. So, I thought it really made us all, as creators, think and reinvent. Yeah.
That's great. Well, we are just about out of time, but before we finish, I do want to ask you our recurring question to each guest. And so this podcast, the sort of idea behind it is to, you know, explain communication and bring communication out to the general public more. And one of the ways that's most commonly done is through the movies we watch, the books we read, the, you know, music we listen to and all that. So what is something that you are watching, reading, playing, or listening to currently that you would like to share with our audience?
I just finished Squid Game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Netflix series.
Yeah. I was avoiding it for a little while just because I kind of wanted to be like, oh, I'm just not going to fall in with all of the hype. Like, I'm not going to, but that's, nah. Like, it's got to be good. If everybody's talking about it, I might as well. I kind of did the same thing with Bird Box when that came out. I waited a little bit and then finally gave in. And so I gave in to the Squid Games hype, and I'm with it now. I'm so, so with it. Hype on Squid Games. It's so good. And I thought that it had really impactful themes, not only for obviously South Korea, but for America. I think a lot of the themes that they really showcased and sort of hinted at. I thought it was really relevant. I thought it was impactful. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. So I recommend it, even though everybody's probably heard that they are recommending it.
Well, and it's really interesting. I was just talking to a class this morning about it, that here's this South Korean show that is the '1 television show in 90 territories around the world, which is not something that we see very often. And the reason why is it seems to really be connecting with audiences in a way that a lot of international programming hasn't in the past, but even a lot of American programming, which we sort of tend to take a great deal of pride in, that we export our media out to the rest of the world. But even a lot of American programming doesn't connect in the way that this one has.
Yeah, I think it's kind of universal. And also, I feel like everybody, at least that I know that has watched it, can personalize and relate to at least one of the characters. Usually it's the main guy. Of course, it's always the main guy. They always make him the most relatable one. But I think everybody can find a character in there that they just go, that could have been me. Like I could have found myself in that same predicament, in that same situation, or that same debt. And so it hits hard. I mean, I think it's really, really good.
Great. So everyone check out Squid Game if you haven't already. As you noted, probably most people have.
Most people probably have, yeah.
But maybe you can lead a discussion about it and figure out how people are feeling about it. Who do they empathize with and why?
Right. Who are you? Take a quiz.
I think that would actually be really good for that show.
Yeah, I bet BuzzFeed already has a quiz on that. Which Squid Game character are you?
Yeah,
they've got to.
That seems likely. They have it for Saved by the Bell. Like,
right.
Which character are you?
Which mac and cheese are you?
All right. Well, Kalie, I really want to thank you for joining us today. If people are interested in your research and you and what you're doing and everything, do you have something you want to plug or some way that they can kind of follow up with you?
Really, I'm not on a whole lot of social media. I mean, I have Facebook for close friends, but otherwise just my email, really, if they wanted to get in touch with me. Am I allowed to just give?
Sure.
It's just my name, Kalie.Scanlan at siu.edu, Kalie.Seanlan at siu.edu. I am also co-host of a podcast myself. This is the Paranoia Percentage podcast. So if you're interested in spooky things or cryptids or some light conspiracy theories, we don't go into the big scary ones, but we just released an episode on Bigfoot.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the reason why it's called Paranoia Percentage is at the end of these episodes, we give our percentage that we believe in what we're discussing. Usually it's like 0, but they are fun to discuss.
What were you for Bigfoot?
For Bigfoot, I think I was, actually at the end of it, I think I was like 5%. Because we talked to a monster hunter who is adamant that he's had real experiences with them and has found their nesting sites and things like that. So I was at 0%, and then we talked to him, and I'm going, maybe.
See, I think I have to give Bigfoot even a higher percent.
Really?
Because I think I'm a big X-Files fan, so I sort of want to believe.
Right.
And so I want to believe that Bigfoot's out there. I like the idea that there's this animal out there living in the wild that has evaded us and has kind of fooled us and everything.
Right.
I would, I don't know if I actually believe that. I want to believe that.
Right. Well, there are some that are just so compelling. A few months back, we did simulation theory, and I straight up believe it, but my co-host is like, nah.
This is sort of the Matrix idea that
Yeah,
we're all
yeah.
living inside of a computer simulation.
Yeah. And so we just talked through some theories, and some of them are very silly. Like we have one on where rabbits, you know. So they're usually just really funny and fun, and we just sort of just chat about these theories that some of them are very compelling and some of them are really silly. But check us out at, we're on YouTube, we're on Anchor, pretty much anywhere that you can listen to a podcast. I recommend our YouTube because our editing is bomb. And you can watch us and I think we're kind of funny. It's Paranoia Percentage.
All right. So, Google that, and I'm sure you can find it on the various platforms and everything. And this is the perfect season for it. So,
yes, our next thing coming up is that we're going to be reviewing the worst movie of all time, Troll 2.
Oh, poor Troll 2.
I know.
It'll never live down. It's funny how we pick a movie that's suddenly the worst movie of all time, and you kind of watch it and you go, there's got to be something worse, right? Like there's something more incompetent. Like this is bad, but it's not entirely incompetent. And,
right. There's always something worse.
Yeah, but it's funny how we collectively decide, no, this is the one. We're going to pick on this film. This will be the one that we pick on.
That's true.
Yeah, so check out the Troll 2 episode, particularly for Halloween, but that Bigfoot episode sounds really interesting as well. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in and listening. So just like you can find that podcast on various platforms, you can find this podcast on various platforms. You've obviously already found it, but if you're not already a subscriber, you can do so via Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get podcasts. My name is Justin Young. You can email me at justin.young@siu.edu if you have any questions, comments, or feedbacks on the podcast. Kalie, I want to thank you again for being our guest this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been great learning about everything that you do. And please tune in next week. We'll have maybe not next week, but soon we'll have another guest. And thank you for listening.